Hello, everyone, and welcome to another interview session with an experienced, seasoned sport professional. This is Dr. Tim Rice coming to you, and I'm really excited today to have Keri Luchowski from Division III's, NCAA Division III's North Coast Athletic Conference. She serves as the commissioner of the conference, and Keri, welcome so much to our session, and thanks so much for being part of this.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, glad to have you. I always seem in all these videos to have the one thing that's great about this business, especially those people that climb the ladder in the business, is you get a chance to network and get to know people. And I've known Keri, since the early 2000s. But there's a connection even more so back. And Keri, share that with the audience real quick, if you don't mind.
Sure. So way back, I played soccer at Wheeling Jesuit College at the time in the NAIA, and we went to the national tournament, and Tim ran cross country in the NAIA as well, and they do an NAIA magazine, and it turns out that something I had written and something that he was in, we were both in the same issue, but we had no idea until, I don't know, pretty good after we met each other.
Absolutely, yeah. And it was interesting because it was from the NAI News in like December of 1992 or 91,
Mm-hmm.
91, I believe. It was my junior year or, super junior year at Mobile College, now University of Mobile. And by the way, there'll be Mobile students watching this. They'll probably find that interesting.
Awesome.
And it's kind of a small world thing. I actually thought I still had the copy. I have it somewhere. It's in my stuff, but so Keri, tell me, give us a little bit of an introduction about who you are, and kind of talk us a little bit about, kind of how did you get your start in sports management and in the sport profession?
Sure. I always knew that I wanted to work in sports. When I was in college, I thought that would realize as a newspaper. And then I interned at a newspaper and quickly realized that was not quite for me. And so I looked in soccer first. I knew that, I wasn't going to play soccer professionally. There weren't many opportunities for women at the time. And so I started out with the National Professional Soccer League, one of the teams in Cleveland. And at that point in time, MLS didn't exist. So that was the highest level of pro soccer in the United States. And I was lucky enough as a communications major, professional writing was my actual major, to catch on with their public relations office. And I got to write some things and got to see what happens at the games and really kind of fell in love with the business side of sport. And I came to the conference in the same kind of role, writing, communications, sports information is what we call it in college. And I've been here ever since. I said I would be here for 3 years. I'm starting my 20th with the conference and 10th in this role. And you never really know. I didn't even know my job existed. And now I can't imagine not doing it. I love it.
Oh, wow. And so you got your bachelor's degree at Wheeling Jesuit in Wheeling, West Virginia. And did you earn a master's degree, or is it?
That was just a bachelor's.
Okay.
And then I went to Kent State and earned a master's in sport management.
Okay, great. So you have a background, obviously, in your role as a commissioner. You're not only somebody that understands how to write sports and play sports, because you were a great soccer player at Wheeling, but you also understand the business of sports. So that's cool. So what led you to Kent?
I knew several people that had gone there. I wanted to stay a little bit closer to home, and I had heard good things about the program. It had some ties to the different parts of school. So it had some ties to the journalism program, and we got some legal and just a little bit, kind of like what I say about my job now. I have to know a little bit about a lot of things, and that was kind of how that program was set up. And so that was really interesting to me.
Okay, great. Well, tell me a little bit, obviously, and by the way, guys, I was a coach in the North Coast Athletic Conference back in the early 2000s, early to mid 2000s at Hiram College in Hiram Village, Ohio, near the Cleveland area. And tell us a little bit about the North Coast Athletic Conference. Give us a little background on it.
Sure. So we are 10 core members, all academically selective liberal arts colleges. We have members in Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Indiana. and we sponsored 23 sports for men and women, amongst the most in Division III. And some of the things that we've prided ourselves on and kind of been known for, gender equity. We were one of the very first conferences formed with the idea that women's sports were equal to men's and that they should be part of conference operations as a matter of course. We believe all sports should be treated equally, so we don't prioritize sports in any way. So, field hockey, cross country, tennis, swimming, those things are just as important to us as football and men's basketball. We were formed in 1984. That was our first playing season, 1984-85. And at that point in time, that was not very much the prevailing idea in college athletics. It was conferences were formed football and men's basketball, and if you were lucky, women's basketball. And then there was competition for other sports. It just wasn't prioritized in a way that the founders of this league thought were important. We prioritize mutual trust. Our institutions really try to work together, and it helps because we all think about the same way about how athletics fits into an institution. And we believe in presidential control. The presidents run this conference. It's their conference. And that, especially at that time, it's becoming more of a popular idea. But that was something also unique. And I think that's what helped the conference be so stable and successful for so long.
Wow. And, and I can say this based on my knowledge of NCAA. I mean, the one thing about the North Coast Athletic Conference that has always been such a big, feather in the cap of the conference, that has been the gender equity side. And I believe it's probably the vanguard or the leading conference in all of NCAA at any division. And of course, Keri has a huge impact in carrying the torch that a guy named Dennis Collins basically carried for many years. Can you tell the audience about Dennis a little bit?
Sure. Dennis Collins was the founding executive director of the NCAC. And he was my boss and mentor and colleague for 10 years before he passed away suddenly. But he was this conference. He lived it. He loved it. And he was really kind of that connector and driving force to really bring its message out. He used to say all these things that people would hear, like, if you're a pioneer, that means you have the arrows in the chest, and all of these things about being the first in all these different areas. And, he was the NCAC for a long time. And, myself following him and anyone who comes, we're really just trying to live up to that ideal that he set for the conference.
Right. And something that I'm a little off script here, but I think that it's really important. You bring up the fact that you more or less were mentored by Dennis. How important is mentorship in climbing the ladder in this business?
Oh, it's incredible. They say that it's who you know. I typically say it's who knows you. But the skills of the job, anyone can learn. If you step into a commissioner role, you can learn how to schedule. You can learn what the NCAA rules are. You can learn how to check boxes, all of those things. But to have someone who kind of guides you and tells you what the pitfalls are and is there to offer you advice and to kind of just to be that bridge to you, to the world, it's amazing. I would not be sitting at this in this chair without Dennis, Steve Ulrich, Joe Underko, Tim Gleason, so many, Dick Rasmussen. There's so many commissioners who, like, I could just say, I wouldn't be here without them showing me the ropes.
Yeah, and you bring up Joe Underko, of course, being an old President's Athletic Conference coach at Grove City. I know Joe pretty well. When he was the sports information director at Westminster, the rivals from Grove City down the way in Wilmington, PA. So real quick, as far as one thing I'm curious about, and I think the audience would be interested to know, what are your biggest challenges in your job on a day-to-day basis?
I think, we just came back from the NCAA convention, and we talked about this a little bit. I think, being an executive director or being an athletic director or being in a position of leadership in athletics, it's a people business. And so, again, sometimes the skills are challenging, but it's trying to keep everyone in the conference moving forward, working together, trying to see that big picture, because it's so easy. We are competitive people we're in sports. Like, we all want to compete. We all want to win. We're all very emotional. And sometimes that bubbles over and we get kind of lost in the details. But ultimately, the big thing is trying to keep everyone moving and to understand that, yes, we're competing, but we're on the same team. So I use family a lot. I talk about family a lot. Our people probably are just sick of it. But, my brother and sister, I compete with them. I want to beat them every time. There's just no mercy. However, if we go outside the family, I want them to win. I want them to do well. And you will not talk about my brother or sister. You will not take them down. And that's how I see the conference. And so trying to get everyone to buy into that idea that, the best one of us does, it raises us all up.
Absolutely. And of course, the North Coast Athletic Conference is arguably one of the best conferences competitively in the United States in NCAA Division III. And, some of the champion teams in that conference, obviously the ones that are very well known are at Kenyon and Denison in the swimming area. Can you explain a little bit about that?
Sure. So, the North Coast has won. So this is our 35th year of competition. So in our previous 34 years in men's swimming and diving, we have won every single championship except for one. And those were won by Kenyon, who won 31 in a row, which is an incredible, untouchable record. All divisions, the most consecutive championships. Their women had won 17 consecutively. Denison is our most recent champion. It is just, it's a remarkable thing that takes a lot of hard work from the coaches and the administrations and the student athletes. And it's not something we take for granted at all. But we do have championships in other sports. So we have won a championship, at least one championship nationally ever since we've existed. We have men's golf championships, we have tennis championships, we have football championships, and so it's we have volleyball championships, and we tend to compete at the highest levels. We are not there are Division III conferences who have won more championships than us, but we are definitely in that group of leaders, and it's something we take great pride in, knowing that we focus on academics and yet we can still be successful on the field. And we think that's the true D3 ideal.
Yeah, and I agree. And I was always impressed during my 3 years in the North Coast with really the way it was run. And you brought up the competitive side, that we definitely battled some of the best in the country in basketball from where I was as a head basketball coach, the Wittenbergs, the Worcesters. I would, 1 week, literally, I'll never forget, I remember it'd be 4 weeks every year I would play the number one ranked team in the country. That always happened. And Wittenberg would be one, and then Worcester would beat them, and Worcester would take their place. And it was always such a challenge as a coach. And, of course, one of the things about the North Coast Athletic Conference that I've always been appreciative of as a sport professional is just the amazing amount of support that the universities, colleges have. Case in point, Kenyon having the KAC, the Kenyon Athletic Center. It's a $75 million facility. It's like going to Disneyland. I mean, it's just the most amazing facility.
We are very blessed. Our institutions, our presidents, and it starts with the top, because if the presidents don't understand or value athletics and the things that athletics bring as part of the co-curricular experience, and the academic value of athletics, then those things don't happen. And the CAC and Denison, and so since you've begun, we've kind of had a sweep through the conference of people, working on improving their facilities. The thing that sometimes people don't remember, especially if you're not in the Division III world, is those are campus facilities. And so one of the nice things we've seen is that, athletics supporting the whole idea of campus wellness and just how that sound body, sound mind of the liberal arts kind of is put in practice across our schools, because those buildings are all open to the entire campus. And that's something that is a little bit different about the Division III world. That actually happens all across Division III. And it's one of the reasons I think so many people gravitate to it.
Yeah, no, I mean, and you brought up the word co-curricular, and I talk about that a lot in my own role whenever I'm coaching or working with any organization. That athletics is truly part of the educational experience. That's one of the great things for anyone watching that might not understand what NCAA Division III is all about. It truly is the most balanced collegiate athletic experience you're going to find, simply because as my mentor at Grove City used to always say, our recruiting motto was, we're looking for tough, hard-nosed Christian geniuses who want to play for free. And, one of the things, we were always looking for the kids that were going to go on to greatness and that really wanted to be part of what we were doing. And, I was talking about Jake Reed, who's now the president of Sporting Kansas City, and he's a former Division III guy. And, of course, we have so many stories about the folks that have walked the halls of the schools that we've all worked at or we work with. And so that's really cool. Now, one thing I wanted to ask, what skills do you find are the most important for climbing the ladder in the sport business, whatever area you go into? What are the things you need to have in your tool belt in terms of skills?
Well, I think you need to be curious. I think you need to be collaborative. You need to be able to work with others. You need to be able to put your ego aside. I'm not sure exactly how to describe that, but I think, in our business, it's so often not about us. And if you're going to do well, it's because you're going to be doing well at something else. You're going to be bringing in sponsorship dollars for your institution. You're going to be providing excellent student-athlete experiences for your students. You're going to be providing a level of care for your students if you're in the medical field or, compliance, whatever it is. The idea of being a servant leader, I think, is something really important in athletics. I think you need to be competitive. This is something that people want to do. And so you need to find a way to stand out. Everyone thinks that college athletics or professional athletics is fun, and it is. It has a lot of fun days, but there are a lot of days where you grind and you're doing work, and people are often really confused when I tell them that most of what I do is at this desk. Like I have a desk job, and that doesn't resonate with what they think. You need to be persistent. No one climbs straight up the ladder. You start to climb, and then you might jump across to another ladder, then you might have to take a step down. And it's never just a straight rocket shot to the top. And so persistence, patience, I think these are all like personality traits. Right. Again, I'm a big believer that skills can be learned. You might be great at math, you might be great at writing, you might be great at any of those things, and those talents will serve you well. But if you have no people skills and you can write great, it's going to be a little tougher. You may get in the door, but you may not stay.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that last part up because it kind of segues to the next thing I was going to ask you, and it's regarding presentation. As you know, I'm kind of a stickler on that kind of thing. How important is presentation? You brought up the person that doesn't have the greatest people skills might be able to write. Well, hey, they may not connect with their audience, and it could go the other way too. How important is presentation in climbing a ladder?
I think it's probably more important than people want to admit. You definitely need the skills. You cannot get by on presentation alone. I'm a firm believer in that. I think you will be found out if that is all you have. But you do need to present yourself, and you may not always have to be the person who's in front of the room. That's a skill that I've had to learn. And you may remember me from my assistant days. I'm really happy behind my desk and not out in front of people. And that's something I've really had to practice. But I have the ability to do it if I have to. And so that is I think you need to be able to let people know if you can't get your message out and they don't know that you care, you can't share that in some way, then you're not going to go very far.
Right. And, one of the things I failed to mention, my wife, Dr. Candy Rice, worked with Keri when Candy was the sports information and marketing director at Hiram. during my time. And I can go back, and one of the memories I have is being in Canton, Ohio at the NCAC swim championships, where Candy would go down and assist Keri and Dennis and the other folks with the management of the event. And, the one thing that I think is so critical is having, everyone has their own personality type, right? And they're all going to have the way that they present themselves, or the way that they look at the world and whatever. And, when I think of Candy and working with you, I remember her saying, man, I just loved working with Keri and working with the NCAC team because everyone was in it for the right reasons. How important is that?
I think that makes everyone working together. I mean, that's really the only way. I think if you're in it for different reasons, you're going to eventually be found out, and you're not going to last. I think, one of the things when I interviewed here, Dennis sat down and said, we have really good people, and if they're not, they don't last. And I thought, okay, well, he's just selling me on this job. And that has really been the case. People do tend to stay here unless they're not the right fit. And so if you're not in it for the right reasons, or even if you are in it for the right reasons, but they're just not the same reasons everyone else is, it may not be a fit for you. Every job is about fit in some way. And so there's somewhere else that may fit you better. And I think that's true across the board, regardless of what profession you're in, regardless of what you're doing.
Yeah. And here's another question. How important has networking been in your ascent to the position you're in?
I think it was really important. I think when I took over, I was the assistant, and, Dennis was really the front and the face and all of that of the NCAC. And even internally, I think with our presidents, many of them they knew of me, and they sure knew my email because I sent them a million things. But they didn't know me, and they didn't know what I could do. They didn't really know anything about me at all. And so being able to go back to their staffs and their athletic people and say, tell me about Keri, was really important. And that's our internal conference network. And all of those people knew who I was because I did work with them on a much closer basis. And the ability when I stepped into this role to be able to be successful, it means to be working with the people around you. So we work with our neighbor conferences, we work with our peer conferences, we work with the NCAA staff. And I knew those people. And I didn't know everyone. Obviously, as you go, your network always continues to grow. But those early connections were invaluable because, when you first start, you really don't know everything. You don't know, heck, you might not know anything. But I knew where to go. And that was really helpful to have people around. And it also helps me help our people because I can connect them to others that I know. It's really important to start building your network.
Yeah, and that's something that I think for me, Candy, my wife, she always says that you can connect with anyone, Tim, and part of it is because I have an interest in people and kind of who they are, but I also understand that I didn't arrive. It took a lot of hard work. It took a lot of losses. Took some wins. It took a lot of just experience of volunteering and everything else. And that's one thing I think that every young person or any person that's just getting into the business needs to understand. You have to grind. You used the word grind earlier. I mean, you have to grind.
It does. So when I started, we were of the same age, so it was a little different. And the unpaid, the volunteer experiences were a lot more the norm. If someone got paid anything for what they did, it was kind of amazing. And I volunteered when I first started with the Cleveland team. That's kind of how I got in the door. I had sent stuff from school. I had sent an interest letter. I had sent a cover letter and a resume. And really, I just wanted the opportunity to write some things for the team. I wasn't asking for anything else. And being a female at that point in time, the person who was in charge of the public relations just thought that I was trying to get get to meet the players on the soccer team. So no real acknowledgement that I myself was an athlete or a soccer player, that I could actually write, all of those things. I was pretty much dismissed. It was one of the only times in my career, I'm very lucky, that I was immediately dismissed for being female. And so I came and I volunteered. I just showed up and, said, I'll do anything. I started keeping stats. Nobody likes to do that, but I can do it. Great. I did this. I can do this for you. I can help. I would make copies and just deliver them around the building, whatever it took at first. And then I did get my chance to write because they saw that I was serious. And without that, I wouldn't have gotten my position with the league office. I had met somebody who worked in the league office, and when they had someone who was leaving, and I said, well, I need an internship. Why don't I do that for you? As an intern, and I got my opportunity, and I ended up getting hired through that opportunity after working for an entire summer for free. And I was trying to go back and do odd jobs in some places that I had used to work, just to try to make sure I had gas money to get to my internship, and just trying to just make it work. And without the skills and the experience that I got there, because I literally would just, I was fearless. I would say I can do that. And I got to do so many things, and I earned their trust. And without those experiences, I never would have come here. I came here, and the reason I even knew about the North Coast was one of our PR directors in the league at the Cleveland team had left, and he had gone to Case Western Reserve. Case Western was one of our founding members. They were leaving to go to the University Athletic Association, but he knew that they needed someone here, and he knew I was looking, so he told Dennis about me, and he told me about the conference. I came in, interviewed for the job, went through the process, and was lucky enough to get here. But I would not have been here without that connection and those experiences of working for free and trying to figure it out.
Yeah, I tell people stories about my experience of going to Pillsbury College in southern Minnesota, a National Christian College Athletic Association member at the time. The school's closed now. It's where Candy went to school for undergrad, and I'll never forget, I'm this kid from Alabama. I went up there because the athletic director was a former assistant basketball coach at Mobile, networking connection. Mm-hmm. And he's like, hey, Tim, I got this great opportunity for you. I'm going to give you an opportunity to be an assistant basketball coach, start the cross-country program back up, and be the sports information director. And I'm going to give you an apartment and a meal card, and I'll get you a job at the Nike factory store. And I'm like, holy smokes, where can I sign up? I don't know. It was, for me, it was like, oh my gosh, I get a chance to do this. And mm-hmm. it takes an awful lot of drive, initiative, self-drive, really, to be able to climb this ladder. And, I'm glad, thanks for sharing what you just shared, because I think that anyone that's watching us needs to understand that, this is a business that, you don't just cheat. Keri didn't just become the North Coast Athletic Conference Commissioner just by saying, hey, I want to be the North Coast Athletic Conference Commissioner. She had to work her rear end off to get to that place. And
I was an assistant or associate for 10 years. And had really only at that point started looking around to see what opportunities might be next. And, unfortunately we had an opportunity here. But I wish it would have been somewhere else. But it's, I think times have changed a little. I think people are a little bit, we are a little bit better about how we treat our young incoming staff, entry-level staffs, in terms of, helping them at least live a little. And that's definitely for the best. That's not the message of the story, but it's putting in that work and being open and being willing to just do anything.
Yeah. Another question I have is pertaining to your thoughts on technology. Obviously, we're on Zoom right now, which is pretty mm-hmm. sweet, and doing this video. And I'm in Fargo, North Dakota, and Keri's in Cleveland, in the Cleveland Metro. And one of the things that I am curious about is pertaining to technology and social media. How has that impacted the sport media world, for the better, for the worse? What are your thoughts?
I think, there's probably ways where it's terrible. I think, the whole phenomenon of internet muscles is is not a great thing. But for the Division III, I think, ever since I've been here, we've struggled with the idea that the traditional media has been shrinking. And there's just not enough space to give coverage to our schools and tell the stories of our student athletes that we really want to share and that we think need to be shared. And so a long time ago, especially with the advent of websites and those kind of things, we become our own media outlet. And social media is, it's one of the best ways to do that. It's low cost. It has an incredible reach. It reaches far beyond what we might be able to do. All of our schools are in relatively smaller to very small communities. And so we do have some local media coverage that we love, and we just, we couldn't really do without. We really appreciate their efforts, but this allows us to kind of tell our story on our own and reach so many more people where they're at. And it's been very beneficial.
Yeah. So how do you promote the North Coast Athletic Conference? I mean, is there a specific strategy you have?
We do, and we're actually working on a branding campaign right now, trying to figure out kind of the best way to share our story, and to get and to kind of collectively talk about ourselves in the same way. Because there's so many great things going on, and we can always do a better job of telling that story. And so some of the things we've in recent years been really lucky to be able to do is to kind of show with pictures and video, and we're really working on what that strategy might be at this point. I think up to now it's been kind of like, hey, look at what we can do. And look at this fun thing we did. We just want to share it with you. And so we're trying to get a little better at that.
Well, one of the things we talked about a lot is kind of climbing the career ladder, or just going from point A to point Z. And how important are internships? And you kind of talked about a little bit taking that free internship earlier in your career, but how important are internships in your role with the North Coast Athletic Conference? Do you have interns at all?
We do not. When I got here, I had a long talk with Dennis about it because of my, past experience. And one of the things was that we always felt like we didn't want to have the free intern. Like we wanted to be able to offer something. And I think, I've probably changed my mind on that a little. But it's been, so we've been growing our staff. And so we've kind of been able to focus on that. I do really feel strongly that if we were to have an intern, we need to make it a really good experience. And it needs to be more than making copies or scanning things for the archive of the website. And so as we've worked the past few years on building up our staff, I think we will soon probably be in a position where that would be more useful to us, and also a good, useful experience to the student, because I just don't want someone to come in here and make copies. I think that's a waste of their time.
Well, I would agree with that. I think one of the biggest losses of an opportunity for an organization is to say, well, we want to have this intern come in, but the organization doesn't actually do their part to prepare to have. It's kind of interesting to say that, because you're bringing an intern in to give them experience. You also need that human resource, right? And, you want to be able to be prepared in your role to actually not waste their time. How important is that?
Oh, I think it's really important, because if they don't get a good experience, it'll get out, and you probably won't get great future interns. And it's a waste for both sides. They're not going to learn anything. And we're not going to get the benefit of having somebody, doing a project or working for us. And so it's really something that I want to be intentional with, and just haven't really had a chance to. I mean, it sounds terrible, like we're not bringing in interns, oh my, but it just isn't something that, we've focused on. As much as I think internships are really important.
Sure. How would you tell someone who might be watching this video to get their foot in the door right now, if they're just getting out of college, or they're preparing to graduate, or
Yeah, there are actually a lot of internships that will be coming open, especially through some NCAA programs that help fund some of those opportunities. And I think that you really need to focus on why. What is your why? Why are you doing it? If you think it's because sports are fun, you're probably not going to get very far. You're not going to get that foot in the door. But if it's because you had a good experience and you want to offer that to someone else, if it's because you have a passion for something, explain that. People want to know why something's important to you. People want to know what's driving you forward, what you want to do. It doesn't have to be you take this internship and this is the thing you do for the rest of your life, because that's typically not how life works. But if I'm looking to hire, and when I have been looking to hire, I need to know why. And then all the other things that everyone tells you, make sure that you're applying to the job that you're applying for. Make sure your materials reflect what you're looking for, what the job is requesting. Stretch a little. You don't have to have every requirement. And I say that mostly to your female students. I think males have a lot more confidence, and they only have about half the requirements perhaps, and they'll still apply. Risk a little, stretch a little, and just know why you're doing it. I sound like a little bit of a broken record right now, but that's the most important thing.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Keri, that, one of the things about this business is, it truly is it's not for the faint of heart. I mean, you're not like a soldier or anything, but in many ways, I think about my own climb, going from Mobile, Alabama to, spending summers in Racket Lake, New York, which, by the way, that's how I got my connection in Ireland, which ended up, proving itself 25 years later. And then, going all over the United States, and Keri's very aware of kind of my wife and I and how we travel, and we're all over the place. But without my ability to say, hey, I'm going to do whatever it takes, I'm going to grind, I'm going to understand why I'm doing it. And even sometimes why you shouldn't. At Hiram, I stepped away because I knew that it wasn't, I needed to move away for someone else, a person like Steve Fleming, to come in and take it from there. And so, I think that's very incredible advice. The next question I was going to ask is there any one piece of advice, any one thing that you would say that every person that's trying to climb this ladder, if they're watching this, what's the one piece that you would give them right now in terms of advice?
You can do anything for a year. I tell people that all the time. You're going to get something out of wherever you are. And I use a year because, and sometimes if it's not the right fit and it's that miserable, then you need to walk away. Your own sanity, your own health, those things are much more important than any job, and there's another job down the line. But there is something to be said for sticking it out. People like to know that you will stay when it's hard. And nothing will, in my experience, and I realize I am extremely lucky to say that nothing in a year will kill you. No, there are always times where that may not be true, but we don't work in an industry that is famous for work-life balance. Games happen at night, games happen in the afternoon, games happen on weekends at all times, and there's still work to be done outside of the games. And so that is a schedule that is difficult to understand unless you're in it. You miss a lot of things. I miss a lot of family occasions, and I have over the years. It's a little easier for me now, but that's just the fact of life. And so you can do it. Give yourself the chance to know if something's just uncomfortable because it's new, or if it's a fit or not. Really, you need to take some time to figure that out. And there's no shame. There is no shame if something is not a fit. That just means your fit is somewhere else and you haven't found it yet.
Oh, that's great advice. Tell us a little bit about your Philadelphia Flyers, experiences and how much you love the team. Congratulations, by the way, on the 3-1 victory over Winnipeg yesterday. See, I know this kind of stuff about Keri,
I
and that's why
know.
she's laughing. So
It has been it's a hard couple years to be a Flyers fan. So I grew up in Cleveland. We did not have we still do not have an NHL team. We do have a minor league team now. But when I went to college in West Virginia, a chunk of my teammates, there were only two of us from Cleveland, but there was a chunk of girls from the Philadelphia area, and so. I like to say I started, watching hockey with them. I was completely enamored of the sport from the moment I saw it, and then I saw John LeClair, and so I blame him for my extremely difficult love affair with the Philadelphia Flyers. Extremely athletic individual. He's very large, part of the Legion of Doom. He could skate. He could hit. He could score. I was just completely. He's my favorite Flyer still to this day. Even though they're a little tough to love right now, they have won 4 in a row, so that's exciting.
Well, and I think that the one thing that's really cool about sports is that we really truly can get behind a certain team and get behind. I can tell you right now, seeing Alabama get absolutely crushed by Clemson in that national title game was very difficult for me. But ultimately, I'm going to be a Tide fan for the rest of my life, and I'm sure you will be a Flyer fan too.
On to the next for you. Yeah.
Well, Keri, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to, take my questions. And of course, it's always good to talk to you, and it's been a while, of course. But, if anyone is interested in reaching out to you, how can they do that?
So I'm pretty easy to find through our website, but my email is Keri@northcoast.org. Our website is northcoast.org, and you can reach out through there.
Great.
I'm on Twitter. I'm also on Twitter, NCAC_Keri.
Okay, cool. And, everyone, again, you have a commissioner of an NCAA conference that's willing to take your emails and talk with you. She's a great resource and obviously an incredible example of how when you put tons of effort in and you're loyal that you're going to get to great places. Keri, thanks so much for being willing to take part today, and thanks for being willing to impart your knowledge to the folks that are watching.
It was my pleasure. It's always nice to chat with you, Tim.
Yeah, same here. All right, guys, thanks so much. We'll see you in the next video. Take care.